Thank you.
Preparing to start the recording, Madam Chair.
Well, we can, I appreciate that he wants to come on. He can continue to try, but given that it's on consent, he doesn't have, he's
Right.
not hearing.
Okay.
But we can give him just a couple minutes.
Yeah, no rush.
There's no problem with that.
So on Saturday, because, nobody can go trick-or-treating, which is really upsetting for my grandkids. My youngest one, she's turned 6 next Wednesday. So we're going to have a Halloween / birthday party for her on Saturday. So in the morning, I have to be Maleficent for one granddaughter. And then in the afternoon, I have to be Ursula for the other granddaughter. Change out there of headdress.
Well, they're lucky to have such a fun grandma.
I love Halloween.
Me too.
Next to Christmas, it's my favorite.
Julie, did you get the email I sent you this morning?
Oh yeah, there's an ex parte, right?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure you got it.
I did see it as I was rushing around. Yep. Thank you.
Good.
I'll take care of it after this.
Yeah.
So just to let you know, I thought we were almost there, so I did start. So we are live, folks, just to let you know. Just
Right.
wanted
Well, while we're waiting to see, thank you for letting us know, Paul. And while we're waiting to, I know that there are some people who wanted to join, so we're allowing them a little time to join. And in the meantime, those of you who are tuning in who are wondering, we have a new board member. Her name is Maleficent. Maleficent Verdugo Peralta.
Recently sworn in.
And obviously, if you're watching this in the future, it's our last hearing before Halloween in 2020. And so I threw together my Harry Potter robe because, of course, and I've got a wand. So if anybody gets out of line, be careful. Got a wand and I'm prepared to use it. And we'll just give maybe till, it is 5 after. Okay. I see that there's a couple of attendees.
it's just doing the same thing, Julie, that Dr. Bernstein did. I tried promoting Esperanza twice and it's not coming over and giving me a failure.
Well, nobody else has to be promoted, right? If they're attendees, they can watch, correct?
Exactly. Sounds good.
No, being as this is on consent, nobody else will have to, unless they're a member of the public who wants to be heard.
AQMD.gov email. Do you know who it is, Rosalinda?
Yeah, Chris Norton is on, but he says he can hear us, but we can't hear him when he speaks.
Okay, but he doesn't have to. If he ended up having to speak, it would be because it came off consent. Okay, so that's fine. Let's see. I have
Here's the new alternate, Micah. Mackay.
I'm just gonna hang up then, okay?
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. All right. Okay, so it looks like we can begin. Good morning. The hearing board of the South Coast Air Quality Management District is in session. Today is October 29th, 2020, and the time is 9:05 a.m. We are meeting remotely via Zoom, given the current pandemic and the stay-at-home orders still in place in the state of California. We have one matter on the calendar today, and it is on our consent calendar. And that matter is Phillips 66 Company, case number 4900-111. And it is for a short variance. And we have many documents. And I apologize, Madam Clerk, that it took me until right before the hearing to realize how we should number these. Okay, so I'm gonna go real slow. And if you have any issues, please let me know. So given that we began with exhibits to the petition, I am going to begin by numbering those first. So I'm going to number them as they have been marked and numbered in the petition. So that is exhibit number 1 is the facility permit. Exhibit number 2 will be the one-page diagram of the process hooking up to the VCU instead of the flare. Exhibit number 3 will be the photographs, all of them. I think there are 3, but there are several of the on-vent system. We will mark as exhibit number 4 the page of turnaround emissions. And Madam Clerk, I saw that there was an exhibit 5 tab. Is there an exhibit 5 to your petition?
Yes, they're the proposed variance conditions.
Okay, so then I'm gonna have to remark everything. Okay, so exhibit 5 will be those proposed variance conditions, which obviously if different then will be replaced by the final proposed findings and decision, which we'll mark in a moment. So those 5 exhibits that were attached to the petition will be marked as exhibits 1 through 5. Then moving on to the consent papers. We have the joint stipulation to place the matter on consent calendar. That will be marked as exhibit number 6. Okay, I'll come back to that because first I want to mark everything.
Yes.
There is the declaration of Marshall Waller for Phillips 66 Company, and that will be marked as exhibit number 7. And the parties do agree in the stipulation, which I'll go over in a moment, to place that in evidence. So we will place that declaration in evidence, and I'll go through whether there is anything else that they wish to place in evidence. Okay, we also have the proposed order granting a short variance. That will be marked as exhibit number 8. Okay. Exhibit number 9 will be a comprehensive email chain. It will be the one that the final update and all of the emails that came before it on the chain. The final update from Chris Norton dated the 27th at 4:18 p.m. That entire chain, but not, I'm going to separately mark all of the attachments. But that chain itself will be marked as exhibit number 9. Okay, then I'm gonna go a little bit out of order because I think it makes sense to mark as number 10, the updated responses to hearing board questions for use of VCU. Okay, so that document, the questions and the updated responses will be marked as exhibit number 10.
Just a moment, Judy. That's the one that's dated October 22nd, you said?
It has a date of October 26th at the top.
Oh.
I have a question. When
Yes,
did they come in? I got most of the material, but what you're talking about now?
they were at the bottom of the email chain that responded to member Balagopalan's questions. So there were a number, there were permits for the, I'm gonna get to that, for the thermal oxidizer. Sorry,
When were they emailed?
the 27th was the update. So that was 2 days ago in the afternoon. And I don't know if they came before that, but that was the last time they were sent. Madam Clerk, are you?
I think so. Now you're speaking about the one that's Monday, October 26th at 11:24.
Yeah, it's the document that was attached. Okay, so it's not the email itself, it's the document at the bottom, and it's entitled Updated Response to Hearing Board Questions for Use of VCU, and it has a date of October 26th.
Oh, okay. I don't think I have that, but I'll have to print it out. Oh,
If
wait.
you don't, okay, you have,
Yeah, updated response to hearing board questions for use of VCU. Okay, so that's number 10. And
That
that's,
is number 10, that's correct.
and that's 2 pages, right?
That is 2 pages long.
Okay, yes, I do have that.
It's 7 questions. The
Uh,
last one being process flow diagram.
That's right. Thank you.
All right. Then there were several attachments to that email chain. The first was a process flow diagram that looked like this. Sorry, forgive my scribbles, but it looked like that. Okay. And that process flow diagram will be exhibit number 11. Okay, then there was another diagram that came next. It was called a block diagram. And these are the names that were given. If it gets confusing at all, these were the names that were given to these documents on the email. So it was called a block diagram. So if you hover over it, you'll see that it was called the block diagram. That will be exhibit number 12.
Block flow diagram, right?
So the process flow diagram, the first one, that is 11. That one looked like that. And then, and if you were confused at all, just let me know and we'll go through these separately. But, and then the one that looks like this, that is the block diagram, and that is number 12. And they're in that order on the attachments. Okay. The next one, there are 4 permits, okay, that were attached. We're going to mark as number 13 the thermal oxidizer permit G27420. So that's the thermal. There's 2 thermal oxidizer permits. The first one that was attached was G27420. That will be number 13.
Okay.
And the second thermal oxidizer permit was G45029. That will be exhibit number 14. And then there were 2 more permits. The one for the caustic scrubber, which was G30775 for the caustic scrubber. That will be number 15. And finally, the vapor point unit permit 42450. That vapor point unit permit will be exhibit number 16.
I'm sorry, 42450?
Yeah, that was the number that
Okay.
I saw. Okay, but it is number 16.
Okay, got it.
Okay. All right, now I'm going to turn to the joint stipulation of the parties. And thank you for going through that, Madam Clerk. Sorry I couldn't give you in advance. And I would have messed it up anyway. Okay, the petitioner and the respondent agree to have the matter placed on the consent calendar, and even though member Balagopalan had a number of questions, no one has removed it. So it's still on the consent calendar. The petitioner seeks a short variance from District Rules 203B, 2004 F1, and 3002 C1 for 2 of its permit conditions that require, well, it says it in here. We'll go through it. For permit condition S56.1 and administrative condition number 4. The parties agree to have the declaration, which we have already done, of Marshall Waller, which we had marked as exhibit number 7. It is admitted into evidence by agreement of the parties. Parties have agreed to the findings and decision and the proposed order, which was marked as exhibit number 8. Parties request the hearing board to decide this matter based on the documents submitted by the parties, and we have now marked all 16 of those. And that doesn't include the petition, of course, the petition. The respondent does not oppose, so the district does not oppose petitioner's request for the variance, and the variance sought by petitioner is not expected to result in violation of Health and Safety Code section 41700, and that is nuisance. Okay, so before we start our discussion, I'm going to see if there's any member of the public who is present who wishes to be heard today. And if you are on the Zoom call, you can either raise your hand, either really raise your hand if you have a camera, or if you hover over your screen below, you'll see you have an option to raise your hand. Or you can just let me know by telling me and turning on your microphone. And I'm not seeing anyone raise their hand or indicate in any other way that they wish to be heard. Okay, with that, let's turn to a discussion, board members. And I don't know who would like to begin. I don't know, board member Balagopalan, you had a lot of questions. If you wanted to begin the discussion, and we'll all, otherwise I can begin, whatever you wish.
Yeah, I can do that to clarify what I was requesting. When I was reading the petition, I was trying to understand the process and the flow, and that's why I had those the questions I had, which they've actually responded to and provided the block flow diagram. Unfortunately, you can't really see it. Even I even brought a magnifying glass. I still can't see them, but I got the gist of it. I think that you can see from some of the yellow lines that the feed flow is going from the FCCU to the alkylation unit. The main thing I think from the petition is it's proactive. It's going to happen next year in March, so they're applying for it early. It's going to be a turnaround. They're going to shut down the alkylation unit, the FCC unit, and several other units at the same time. I think they all feed into each other. So, and the alkylation unit, and I'll focus on that first. I think they also talked about the FCC unit, which they're going to also be shut down during the turnaround, and that's going to a different control system. But the alkylation unit, the permit says if you're shut down, you can go to a flare. However, they instead of going to the flare, and they wanted to went it to the vapor recovery unit, which consists of a 2 thermal oxidizer and a scrubber, which they have a various location permit, so they can bring it on site and run it during the variance period. So that's why they're seeking relief, because they find it actually based on what they've done before in 2016, that is more efficient as emission-wise to vent it to the vapor recovery unit, and there was a significant reduction in emission going through the vapor recovery unit because there's a better control of the VOC and the SOx emissions. So I think they provided that. I think previous to that, they when they went to the flare, it was about 10,000 pounds of SOx emission, but when they used the vapor recovery unit, the emissions dropped down to 6 pounds of SOx. So there was a significant reduction. So it makes sense for them to use the vapor recovery unit. Also, because I think they want to do it concurrently, so they can do this at the same time. They can also run the controls for the FCC, run the cleaning for the FCC unit. So instead of doing sequentially, which will take longer, they can do both concurrently, which will shorten the time. Of course, for them, it's this faster they can do the turnaround, the faster they can get production going. But on the other flip side, I think the benefit in allowing it is that there's a significant reduction in emissions during this turnaround period when they're doing the cleaning. So the alkylation unit, all the inventory, the depressurizing, the steaming, and cleaning will all go to the vapor combustion unit, which is again the 2 thermal oxidizing caustic scrubber, and they have their own requirements for as far as the temperature and the pH of the scrubbing solution and so forth. So that's covered in the various location permits, so they have to meet those. But they also may, and I think that's why in the condition, in the attachment 2, it showed that it's not going to the flare at all, but I think they put in the condition or the flare. So there is a possibility that some of it may go to the flare, but they'll record that and report it under 1118. They got it up to a quarterly report under 1118 for the SOx emission, so they'll report that. But the majority, based on what we've given, is going to go to the vapor control, a combustion unit, and the flare may be used as needed. So then that's the main, and the petition is really on the alkylation unit. And I'll touch on the other unit, the FCCU unit. Initially, they in the petition, they said it's the de-inventory and the depressuring was going to go to the flare. And then the steaming and cleaning were going to go to another portable control unit that they're going to bring in, which is, they call it the vapor point recovery unit, which has the two H2S scrubber and two VOC scrubbers. Again, those are all in, and they initially felt that it qualified as a gas vapor recovery system, so they didn't need to get a variance upon the condition. But I think staff probably told them no, and that's why they revised it. So they're looking at either in the down the road, maybe applying for a variance so they can use that, or getting a permit modification. And I think my understanding from what I see from the writer from Mr. Norton is they're going to apply for a permit. If they don't get it in time, then they'll file for the variance so they can operate the FCC unit with, and vent it to a control system, because I think the district didn't consider that as a gas recovery system. So that's the gist of it, basically. So I think the main here, which we are focused on, is the alkylation unit and the condition S56.1, which they will be in violation of, because they're not going to vent to a flare. Instead, they're going to vent to the vapor combustion unit, which makes, from an emission standpoint, that's a better route to go. So I think, that's what I gathered from the petition.
First of all, that's an excellent, I think, summary of what's going on here. So I appreciate that. And also, your questions were very technical in nature. And in the end, that allowed me to understand a lot better, and perhaps open the door to Phillips 66 realizing that they either have to revise their permit with regard to the FCCU and the vapor point system, or come to us with a variance. So I thought that was all really helpful. So thank you for all your questions. Which is why I think, generally speaking, this type of matter should not be on consent, but given the pandemic, given the remote nature of what's going on, and given the fact that all the critical findings that needed to be made for the short variance, I thought were all contained in the papers. So this was just more of a clearer understanding. So I appreciate that. I agree that the 6 findings can be made. And I just wanted to also point out what is a little bit different about this matter, aside from the fact that it's on consent and normally wouldn't be if we were at the district, is that we usually don't see this kind of advanced planning where we're being asked for short variance, but it's not even for months away. And I think normally we might question that, because variances are always the last resort and why ask so early. But when you're talking about major turnarounds, refineries do plan those well in advance. I believe maybe even years, or certainly at least over a year, or at least close to a year in advance. So to know that's going to happen, and to really think in advance and request the variance that's needed, I think is really good planning on the part of Phillips 66. So I don't have an issue with that either. And I think you've just summarized it all really well. And I think it's really good to point out that while they did in the end say that there's, not in the end, they did put in the conditions that there may be some flaring. This is going to really reduce flaring. And aside from emissions, which we all know are being reduced, people who live near the refinery don't realize emissions are being reduced necessarily, but they will notice that, if there's a lot of flaring. So to reduce that flaring is really comforting, I think, and a good thing for people who live around Phillips 66. So that also is really a benefit of what they're looking to do. And I think all of the 6 findings are covered very, very well in the proposed order. So I don't think we need to go through that, but just to really point out, you said this, Mr. Balagopalan, but just to point it out and put a period on the end of it, the only thing they're asking for is relief from two permit conditions, one of which is just an administrative permit condition, but really from the permit condition that requires these emissions to be routed through the flare in these situations. And instead, they're going to go through this portable VCU, which, as you very well stated, has two thermal oxidizers and a scrubber, and is going to do better reductions of certainly SOx, but overall is much more efficient. So all in all, and it will do the added benefit, of course, as you also pointed out, to the refinery of reducing the amount of time. So conditions are good, and I'm in complete support. Anyone else have thoughts? Yes, Ms. Verdugo-Peralta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also feel that we can find the 6 findings. My concern was and always is when the public is very concerned about seeing the flares, and they are assuming that emissions are associated with that. The fact that they can reduce it in any way, shape, or form by using this portable device, I think, is a plus, not only technically, but also in regards to a public perception. So for that reason alone, I can find that this is a positive thing for them, and I also can find the 6 findings.
Thank you. Other thoughts, Senator?
Based on the complexity of this system and its process, I concur with the findings as well. However, I have a question from Mohan on exhibit number 2. The VCU, is that to the left? Can you explain that diagram? Can you explain that diagram? How it operates? I know they want the thermal oxidizer to be downstream from the.
Do you want me to take a moment and try to put it on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, hold on one second. Give me a minute. Okay. Let me see if I can figure out the share screen. Okay. Go back to the meeting and press my share screen. Okay. Okay. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Sorry, and that is the one you're talking about, correct, Senator?
Correct.
Okay. Go ahead.
And
Go ahead and explain it. Sorry.
yeah, I can take a stab at it. The extreme left, and I did ask a question, that's the alkylation unit. That's supposed to represent the alkylation unit. And normally, and that's why they're saying no to the flare. I mean, there's a KO, the knockout drum before it goes to the flare, knock out the moisture and so forth before it goes to the flare. Even though they put stop on that, it may be used as needed. But the majority of the emissions from the cleaning and depressurization will go to an heat exchanger to remove some of the heat before it goes to the scrubber. Otherwise, it'll evaporate the scrubber solution. So it goes to a caustic scrubber to remove the SOx, and then it's going to go to the thermal oxidizer. While they have 2, I don't think they're using both of them in series, but I think it's one, and then they can add or replace it as needed. You know.
On the diagram, how is that identified? The thermal.
So the scrubber, so it's going to the heat exchanger, the knockout drum, then that the scrubber is the caustic scrubber that was attached in the permit, which in one of the permits that was given to us. And then after it's scrubbed, then it's going to go to the thermal oxidizer, which is the very end. So the scrubber will remove some of the SOx from there. The thermal oxidizer will remove the VOCs. So they get about a 99% reduction of SOx from the scrubbing, and then the VOC is about, they say about 99.9% reduction VOC in the thermal oxidizer. The thermal oxidizer has to be maintained at 1400 degrees, and then the scrubber, there's a pH, I didn't get the pH, you know, they have to maintain a flow rate so that there's an optimum flow rate and a pH so that it can neutralize the acid gases.
Which one is the VCU?
So yeah, so this whole process is called the VCU, vapor control unit.
Can you see
vapor
my,
combustion units.
my thing going around?
Now, what about the KD drum? What's that?
Which one?
The
KO.
knock, that's a KO knockout.
Yeah,
The knockout. It knocked out some of the, presumably the moisture. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what's knocking out the heat. The heat exchange is removing some of the heat, and there may be the scrub will take care of the moisture. So there may be some things that are condensing that they are going to remove from the knockout drum. When you reduce the heat in the heat exchanger, there may be some condensation. That's my assumption on the knockout drum.
What would
got
have
two-
helped, I was
You
just
identified on the diagram, one before and one after. As you approach the flare, you have the same device identified. And
Right.
tell us about that one.
The knockout drum going to the
Yeah.
flare. Yeah, and there, I'm going to make the assumption that's mainly to knock out the moisture and stuff before it goes to the flare. So but it could be some of the light, but I don't see any heat exchanges, so I don't know if there's any condensation or any chilling. It's a very simplified drawing. There may be several processes, and it's a very complex process anyway. I think it's been simplified to a large extent, but I'm going to say moisture mainly, I think, but there may be some condensable that may also be knocked out before it goes to the flare.
For me, what would have helped is if there would have been arrows showing the direction of where it previously went, like maybe in red, and then where it's going now. That would have been a little bit more helpful.
I think if you can say the permit required them to not go to the heat exchanger, the scrub or anything, just go straight to the flare. But they did that in the past, but now they found that is more efficient because they can, one, it reduces emissions more, two, they can operate concurrently because the FCC unit can go to the, I'm assuming, to the flare, the same flare, so they can run both at the same time, and so they can shorten the time. So the new process is to go to the heat exchanger and the scrubber and the thermal oxidizer.
Okay.
The description could have been more simplified, but I do understand. I follow you, but it's quite complex. That's it.
Yeah, and I think so. I think even when they send us the drawing, we can see the other drawing that's in the attachment. I think it was 12 or 13. It's a very complex process, and
Right, I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to stop the share. Hold on a moment. Okay. Okay, any other thoughts or discussion on the findings or the matter? Okay. Mr. Balagopalan, did you want to make a motion? I could, or if you wanted to, it's up to you.
yeah, I can do this. Give me a minute. I can grab my little cheat sheet that you gave us so that I can.
It'll be very easy, I think, because yeah, everything's in the findings and decision, and it's all correct.
Right.
So all the
Change it.
important information you would need to be specific about, you can just incorporate it into your motion by incorporating Exhibit 8.
Okay. So so in the matter of Phillips 66 company, case number 4900-11, I move that we grant a short variance commencing March of, I have the dates.
It's actually commencing around March 2nd, but it's commencing on the, I believe it's on the notice that is given to the board in condition 1 in Exhibit 8.
Okay. All over the place now. See, I care of that real quick. Condition number 1. Yes, so the variance will begin on about March 2nd, 2021, and continue for 18 days at the Wilmington plan, which is located at 1660 West Anaheim Street in Wilmington for facility ID 171107. And the variance is from the following rules and subsection, which they've stated actually in the findings, which is mainly from the administrative condition and permit condition S 56.1, and from the rules that were stated also in the petition. And I'll read that rules. Just a second, because I had it all in one.
It is on page 3, A1.
Yeah. E1, yeah, okay. So from District Rule 203B, 2004 F1, and 3002 C1 for permit condition S 56.1 and administrative condition number 4.
Perfect.
I further move that we adopt the findings and decision and the conditions proposed in the finding and decision with no changes.
And it is Exhibit 8.
In Exhibit 8, yes. And the emissions, there should be no excess emissions, essentially, because instead of going to the flare, they're going to, which is allowed, they're going to a different control unit, which will actually reduce the emissions. So there's really no excess emission from this. And I think that's cool.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Ms. Verdugo-Peralta seconds the motion. Is there discussion on the motion? The only discussion I have is just to clarify, just to be very clear on the record. I think you said it, but let me just be very clear that this this variance will commence upon the notice that is given or is called for in condition number 1, and it will be on or around March 2nd, 2021, and it will continue for 18 days thereafter. Yes, Madam Clerk.
The ending date, I know it's 18 days out, but is there like a date that we can put in there that?
Well, you can put no later than 90 days, but it will be 18 days thereafter. We don't have an ending date, so it's 18 days after. You could estimate it in the minute order. So you could say the 20th, but you could put an asterisk and you could say this is the estimated ending date, but it will be 18 days from the start date.
Okay. It's just, CARB always wants us to have a.
And that way we can estimate a date, and it will be around that date.
CARB always wants us to have like an ending date. So.
Makes sense. So that I would do it that way.
Thank
And you could send it to me if you want before, and we could go through that. Okay, is there any further discussion on that motion? Okay, I vote yes. Senator, how do you vote?
Aye.
Dr. Bernstein, how do you vote? Ms. Verdugo-Peralta, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Mr. Balagopalan, you vote?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. The short variance has been granted, and that concludes that matter. Is there any other business, board members, other than happy Halloween?
Yeah.
May I magic away the pandemic and maybe return to
Normalcy.
as the Jewish people say, next year in Jerusalem. May I say next year in Diamond Bar? Okay. Any other business?
I just wondered, Rosalie, we didn't get, is there a case next week or anything on the calendar?
For November 4th,
November 4th?
it's the county of San Bernardino. They had I don't know if you remember, they had an interim. That was the one that
Okay,
with the fire in San Bernardino. That was the gender reveal thing. Remember
Yeah.
that?
yeah, okay, right,
They're coming back on November 4th.
okay.
And it's very likely they would come with consent papers, I would assume. So we should look for those. If they do. No?
I don't think so, yeah.
No,
They should,
definitely.
but yeah.
We'll see. We'll see, since we heard it already.
Right.
All right, any other business? Okay, thank you all for an excellent discussion. And we are adjourned.
Hey, Jules,
Oh, yes, Dr. Bernstein.
I wanted to ask before, after everybody hangs up, and I wanted to ask you a question. If it's not,
Okay, so do you want to call me then? Because it'll be recorded.
sure. Maybe
Do you have my number?
have your number.
Here, do you have my?
Maybe that's something that we should put together as a list of everybody's email and telephone numbers and get that.
I think we do. Are our numbers on that recent update to this? Let's see. Hold on, let me see. Clerk.
Not
Yeah.
updated.
Can't they just stop the streaming?
Yeah, let me stop the stream.
Oh, okay, you can do that? Oh, that
Yeah.
would. Is it something